Thank you so much for joining us for a presentation for the Mount Vernon Square Apartments. Are you prepared for an emergency? My name is Courtney Arroyo, and I'm going to be presenting to you this afternoon, and we're going to talk a little bit about emergency preparedness. The purpose of this workshop is just to increase residents' awareness on how to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies in Fairfax County. So we're going to talk a little bit about resilience. So what is resilience? It means that we are trying to build our skills and knowledge so that we can survive, adapt, and overcome whatever emergencies or disasters come our way. We do this through our Ready Fairfax program, which is a preparedness program so that we can go out and empower and educate the community to prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. We have a couple modules that we're going to be going through today. Module 1 is emergency preparedness. Module 2 is renters insurance. And then Module 3, we'll talk a little bit about our 2022 emergency preparedness survey. So let's kick it off and talk a little bit about preparedness. Emergency preparedness in our emergency management profession is talked about in terms of mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. The way that we talk to residents about how to prepare for emergencies and the different phases is in more common terms as before, during, and after. So I just want to note, as you can see on this page, but the mitigation triangle is in the before and the after cycle. So we'll talk a little bit more later, but we often hope that we can do mitigation efforts before an emergency happens to lessen or minimize the effects, but sometimes it has to be after because we don't know that it's actually an issue until after it happens. So we want to try to recover and rebuild better so that we can prevent future emergencies. Fairfax County Emergency Management did write the Community Emergency Response Guide, which is a guide to help residents prepare for emergencies. This guide has a lot of different information. It has information on how to prepare, how to respond, how to recover from emergencies. But the best thing of all is that it has templates throughout it to kind of walk you through these steps. The first template that we have is our family emergency plan. So this template really walks you through all the different things that you would need to do in order to put together a plan. In addition, we also have an emergency kit checklist that you can go through. Everyone's kit is different, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but you can use this checklist to get you started. And then we also have a neighborhood preparedness plan, and we use our 5 steps to neighborhood preparedness so that individual neighborhoods, apartment buildings, communities, whatever kind of situation you might live in, it gives you a platform to work with your neighbors to make sure that you have a plan of how to help each other during an emergency. And then best of all, we have actions for you to take. So there are actionable steps for you to take before, during, and after different types of emergencies. We have a couple different guides that also go along with our community emergency response guide, or as we call it, the CERG for short. We have written a kids community emergency response guide that is for ages in elementary school. And then we have a youth guide, which is more towards middle school and high school with a little bit more in-depth information. We also have our new business disaster resilience guide. So let's talk a little bit about mitigation. So as I said before, mitigation are actions that you can take before any emergency happens to prevent or lessen the impacts. So for example, if you live in an apartment building, a great mitigation strategy would be to have renters insurance. This is an action that you can take beforehand. We'll talk a little bit more in depth, but I want to just give you a little preview and say that renters insurance, it does take a little bit of thought behind it in order to make sure that you have the right amount of coverage and you have all your ducks in a row in order to make sure that your mitigation efforts actually work, which will help recover quickly after. Our 5 steps to preparedness are throughout our community emergency response guide. And we talked about having an emergency plan and using that template to create your family's plan. But the second step is probably the most important. A good plan is good, but it's only great if you practice it and you know that it works. It's always better to practice your plan before an emergency happens to make sure that what you've actually planned for is what you can accomplish. So practicing that plan, holding fire drills, making sure that your family knows the different ways to get out of your house, where to go, do they know phone numbers, and all those different kinds of things that you will need to take into account. Step 3 is assembling our emergency kit. Like I said, everyone's emergency kit is going to be different. Whether you have younger kids, older adults, individuals with disabilities or access and functional needs, everyone needs something different in their kit. Whether you take medication on a daily basis, that's something that you would need to consider when putting your emergency kit together. And then staying informed. I hope that you guys are signed up for Fairfax Alerts, but if you're not, we'll talk about it in the next slide. But Fairfax Alerts is our county's free public alerting system and a great way for you to get emergency information. Information can also come via social media. It could come over the radio. You might even watch the news to get your information. So you want to make sure that you have multiple ways in case you don't have power or you don't have cell signal. How are you still going to get that information? And then our last step is getting involved. Now, getting involved does not have to mean that you need to go sign up to volunteer at an organization or anything. Getting involved could just be even having a conversation with your neighbor or even a family member or a friend to make sure that they also have an emergency plan. So there's many different ways that you can get involved without actually leaving your house.
I found this on the web.
So talking a little bit more about preparedness and that getting information. So we do have Fairfax Alerts, which is our county's free public alerting system. And through Fairfax Alerts, we do have our emergency preparedness newsletter, and we send out information on a regular basis. We also have a functional needs registry. It's for individuals who have disabilities or access and functional needs and their caregivers to sign up. And we do send information out before, during, and after emergencies, mostly weather events, just to make sure that you're taking into consideration all the different things to prepare for, such as if we're going to have a power, if power could go out, if you get dialysis, making sure that your dialysis center is open, or if your care provider is actually going to be able to make it to your house. And if not, what's the plan? We also, in the 911 call center in Fairfax County, they do have an option for you to sign up for an emergency health profile. So that's something that you can go in and do, and you would maintain that yourself. And the information is only available when you actually do make a call from the number that you've registered from your emergency health profile. And then you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ready Fairfax. So if you do want to volunteer and get out there and kind of learn some more skills and help us teach about preparedness, there are many different organizations within Fairfax County that do support emergency preparedness. In the Department of Emergency Management and Security, we have the Emergency Management Volunteer Corps. Under the Fire Department, they do have the Community Emergency Response Team. They have our Volunteer Fire Department. The police department has volunteers in police service. They also have auxiliary police officers. We have Neighborhood Watch. We have Red Cross in our area. And then we also have the Medical Reserve Corps that is under our county's health department. So response. You can see up here there's several different pictures showing you all different kinds of ways to respond from emergencies. So part of making a plan is knowing what response options you have. So what actions are you going to take if you get a tornado warning? What actions are you going to take if there is an active shooter in the area? Are you going to shelter in place? Are you somewhere that you have the opportunity to leave safely? Are you in an area that needs to be evacuated? Are you in an apartment building that maybe has a fire alarm going off? These are all things that you want to think about. So I want to really talk about the top right picture where there is an apartment building on fire. We want to assume that all fire alarms are real until they're not. We want to make sure that you get out and stay out. It could only save your life if you get out and you stay out. If you choose to stay in, you could be putting yourself, your family members, or even first responders at danger or risk. So we really do encourage you to take every alarm seriously and get out when you can. In Fairfax County, we do have emergency shelters that we will open in case there are members of the community that are displaced from an emergency. However, we do ask that residents bring their emergency kits to the shelter so that you have your own supplies and your own personal items. A lot of times it takes us a while to kind of set up and kind of get going. So if you have your own items such as a change of clothes, a day's worth of medication, these are things that will just help the process go much smoother. Recovery. So this is kind of the thing that happens afterwards. This is cleaning up. This is making sure that we can get back to where we were before. I know we talked in the beginning about mitigation and renter's insurance, which we're going to talk a little bit more in depth in the next module, but I want to emphasize, this having insurance and kind of doing those steps to make sure that you are prepared and have enough coverage and know how to file a claim. This is what helps recovery kind of go even faster and even more smooth. So module 2, we're going to talk a little bit about renter's insurance and what kind of all goes into having renter's insurance. So a lot of this information came from the Insurance Information Institute. So what we want to do is kind of go over the key components of renter's insurance and what it covers, what it doesn't, and kind of go from there. So the 3 key components are coverage for personal property, liability, and additional living expenses. You can see that personal property is anything that personally belongs to you. So clothing, furniture, electronics, anything that is more on the disposable end that would be a personal property loss. It's not really talking about the actual structure. Liability is repairs that it would be the coverage that would help cover repairs if you were found liable, if you accidentally damaged the property, or you were found guilty of actually causing the issue. And then additional living expenses is any additional costs that you would incur if you were displaced from your residence and you needed to find another place to live, if you needed to stay in a hotel for a couple nights, making sure that you have enough coverage to get those. Which leads us to the question, how much insurance should I buy? You need to make sure that you have enough insurance to replace all of your personal belongings. The best way to do this is to create an inventory of your home. So yes, it does take a little bit of effort but you want to inventory your home by making a checklist of what you have. We even suggest taking photos or even a recording of what's in your house to kind of help you remember afterwards what was where. You can even use like a smartphone app to keep a list and update your inventory, but your checklist should include the type of item, if you have the receipt, like if it's something of substantial value, the year that it was purchased, if it's durable medical equipment or anything that would have a serial number, you would want to make sure that you have that written down. In addition to that, you want to make sure that you write down how much it costs to purchase that item. We'll talk about it in the next slide, but you want to make sure that you are actually able to replace that item. So in a policy, you're going to want to look at what the actual cash value protection is versus replacement cost coverage. So actual cash value protection is typically what the current market value of that item is. So it's not going to be the replacement cost. So if it is an antique and you are valuing it at $20, but your insurance company says it's only worth $10, it's going to go for whatever the market value is that is determined. A policy that includes replacement cost coverage may help you pay to replace your items at today's retail cost. So if you bought a couch 5 years ago that cost $500 and that couch today cost $1,000, your replacement cost coverage would be $1,000, not $500 of what you paid. And just think of that if you were to look at a 5-year-old couch today, what is the actual cash value or current market rate for a 5-year-old couch versus the replacement coverage of what it retails purchasing it new today. So is everything covered? It depends, but most things that are covered are losses from fire or smoke, lightning, vandalism, theft, some windstorms and certain types of water damage. But there are some, most policies do not cover floods or earthquakes. Flood coverage is typically a separate policy that you can get through the National Flood Insurance Program or another private insurance company. And then also earthquake insurance is something that is also added to your policy as a separate expense. So you might be thinking, what about valuables? This would be anything such as, a coin collection, jewelry, anything that might be above and beyond, what could be of value in your home. But this is usually a personal property coverage or a floater to your policy that just covers those items. And these would typically be something, if you had an engagement ring and had it appraised, you would want to take that appraisal number and make sure that that's added into your policy. So liability coverage for renters. This is just another protection typically included in your renter's insurance policy that can help protect you from having to pay out of pocket for expenses if you're found legally responsible for damage to the property or injury of other people. Similar to other coverage, limits do apply. So you might be liable for anything that kind of goes above and beyond what the insurance company policy will pay out. So make sure you read your policy, understand your coverage, and make sure that it fits your need. So additional living expenses, again, if you are going through an emergency and you do get displaced from your home, these additional living expenses would help cover any hotel bills, temporary rentals, meals, or clothing that you would need to get immediately in order to, make sure that you and your family are safe. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is our emergency preparedness survey. So this month is National Preparedness Month. So we have launched a 2022 emergency preparedness survey, and we are really looking to assess the culture of personal preparedness and resilience in Fairfax County. So we would definitely appreciate you taking the time to take this quick survey. If you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know. Again, my name is Courtney Arroyo. I am the Community Engagement Manager at the Department of Emergency Management and Security, and we look forward to watching you prepare.